I'm Aaron, 29 years old, and I've never been what you'd call the favorite. Not the golden child, not the pride of the family, not even the one who gets invited to group photos without a reminder. My older brother, Derek, 34, has always worn that invisible crown. The successful one, the married one, the one who gave my parents grandkids, which apparently makes him the only person in our bloodline who counts anymore. I used to brush it off. I told myself I was just the quieter one, more independent, the black sheep, in the charming, misunderstood way. But it wasn't charming. And it stopped being tolerable the moment my parents made it clear, financially and emotionally, that I was just a bonus character in a story where Derek was the star. I didn't expect anything when my grandfather died. That man was a ghost for most of my life, some mysterious old figure who lived 3 states away and sent the same birthday card every year, a generic best wishes with a crisp $20 bill inside. But apparently, he had been paying attention. He'd seen what I didn't even know he was watching. The Christmases where I was handed socks while Derek's kids tore open drones and tablets. The Thanksgivings where I carved the turkey, cleaned the dishes, and still sat at the kids' table while Derek gave toasts about family values. The birthdays forgotten. The calls never returned. The years I spent building my own life from scratch, working 2 jobs in my early 20s, getting a degree online, skipping holidays because I couldn't afford the gas to drive home, while Derek got help in the form of loans that were never expected to be paid back. My grandfather noticed all of it, and in the end, he left me something I didn't even know existed, a sizable inheritance. The call came on a Tuesday. I was in the middle of making lunch. Nothing fancy, just eggs and toast, and my mom called out of the blue. "No, how are you?" No small talk. Just, "So your grandfather's attorney called. You're getting a pretty big check." I blinked. Literally didn't know how to respond. "Wait, what?" I said, half laughing. I thought she was joking. My mom doesn't joke. "He left you the house," she said, like it tasted sour in her mouth. "And the investment account. Derek's only getting the boat." That was it. That was the beginning. I could almost hear the storm clouds forming through the silence on the other end of the line. She didn't congratulate me. Didn't ask how I felt. Just this flat, cold pause. Then, "You know your brother could use that money more than you. He has kids, Aaron." It wasn't even subtle. That line haunted me for days. He has kids. As if that fact alone invalidated everything I'd done to get where I was. As if being single, child-free, and living in a modest 1-bedroom apartment disqualified me from receiving kindness or fairness. I didn't even know how much the inheritance was at that point. I hadn't called the attorney yet. But she had, clearly. And so had Derek. Because 2 days later, I got a text from him. No greeting. No preamble. "You know you owe this to me, right?" I stared at the screen. I must have reread it 20 times. Owe him? Owe him what? The money my grandfather left to me? I was still trying to wrap my head around the fact that I even had an inheritance at all, and now I was supposed to feel guilty about it? I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I didn't trust myself not to explode. I finally called the lawyer that Friday. His name was Thomas Gerber, and he sounded exactly like someone named Thomas Gerber would sound. Measured, polite, slightly tired of human interaction. He confirmed everything my mother had said. The house, fully paid off and located in a quiet suburb an hour outside the city, was mine, along with an investment account worth just under $320,000. Derek, on the other hand, got the family boat, which was apparently worth around $50,000. A generous gift, but not life-changing. Thomas explained it gently, like he expected me to react badly. But I was too stunned to be anything but quiet. I hadn't talked to my grandfather in almost 5 years. And yet he'd left me this. Not because I was the favorite, but because, as the letter he'd written made clear, he wanted to even the scales a bit. That letter was just 2 paragraphs long, but I reread it more times than I can count. He said he'd seen how I was treated, that he admired my independence, that he was proud of the man I'd become, even if no one else ever said it out loud. I cried. I don't cry often, but I cried sitting alone on my hand-me-down couch with a letter from a man I barely knew who somehow understood me better than my own parents. Of course, that little moment of peace didn't last. The next week, Derek called. Not texted, called. Which was unusual enough that I thought maybe something had happened. Maybe he wanted to bury the hatchet, talk like grown-ups, figure this out calmly. I was stupid to think that. "Hey," he said. in a voice that was already laced with condescension. I assume you've processed everything by now. I didn't know what he meant by processed, so I stayed quiet. He continued, Look, I'm not trying to be a jerk, all right? But come on, man. You don't need all that. You're single. No kids. No mortgage. I mean, what are you even going to do with it? I blinked again. These people really loved reminding me I had no children. I don't think that matters, I said. Grandpa left it to me. That's it. There was a pause. Then he laughed, this short, ugly sound that sounded more like a scoff. You know you're not being fair, right? I have 3 kids. Do you know how expensive it is to raise 3 kids? And the house. You don't even want a house. You're a city guy. I swear, I felt my hand grip the phone tighter. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth would crack. I didn't ask for any of this, Derek, I said, trying to keep my voice even. It's not about what I want. It's about what Grandpa decided. He didn't like that. He hung up. Then came the messages. From Mom. From Dad. Even my aunt, who I hadn't heard from in years. All variations of the same theme. Be the bigger person. Help your brother. Family first. It's just money. He needs it more. You'll understand when you have your own family someday. It was like they'd all been handed a script. And the implication was clear. If I didn't roll over and hand Derek what he wanted, I was selfish. Immature. Cold. Ungrateful. Ungrateful. For what? It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was about control. About them realizing, maybe for the first time, that I had something they couldn't take or guilt me into giving away. A week later, I got an email from Thomas Gerber. Subject line, urgent, attempted contact regarding inheritance. Apparently, Derek had reached out directly to the law firm and asked if there was a legal pathway to reallocate the inheritance. He'd literally tried to contest the will. Not because there was any fraud. Not because there was any technicality. But because he felt it was unfair. The attorney told him, politely but firmly, that the will was solid. That my grandfather had been of sound mind. That there were no grounds for a challenge. I expected that to be the end. It wasn't. That Sunday, I got a message from my mom. Transfer it to him. Or don't bother coming home. No hello. No context. Just that. I sat there with my phone in my hand, staring at those words. Transfer it to him. Or don't bother coming home. I didn't cry that time. I smiled. And that was the moment I knew something had changed. That night, I didn't call anyone. I didn't argue. I didn't send a dramatic response. I booked a flight. I changed my passwords. I locked down my accounts. I updated the security system on the house, my house now. I sent a single email to Thomas, authorizing him to handle all future communication through him, and told him I wanted to discuss next steps for securing the property. Then I went to bed, phone on silent. When I woke up, 43 missed calls, 1 rage-fueled voicemail from my dad. And that was just the beginning. It started small, as these things always do. Little digs, passive-aggressive comments. I had foolishly assumed that going low contact after the transfer it to him message would buy me peace. Instead, it seemed to provoke something worse, like I had broken some unspoken rule of the family hierarchy, and now they were all lining up to put me back in my place. I didn't go home for Easter. Not a big deal, right? I'd never really been a fan of big family holidays anyway. But in the days leading up to it, the messages started again. From Mom. You could at least make an appearance. Derek's kids want to see their uncle. From Dad. It's not about you, Aaron. It's about family. Stop acting like a victim. From Derek, of course. Enjoy spending Grandpa's money alone. So I ignored them. Made myself a quiet dinner. Watched a movie. Tried to enjoy the silence. Then the photos started rolling in on Facebook. The whole family in their pastel best. Derek's kids holding giant plastic eggs. My parents beaming in the background. And then, because the universe couldn't resist a good jab, my mom posted a photo captioned, "So grateful for family. All of our blessings in one room." Oh, I didn't even like Facebook. I rarely checked it. But that night, I checked it 3 times. Not because I missed them, but because I needed the reminder. I needed to remember how quickly they erased me when I stopped serving their narrative. A week after Easter, I got an email from a real estate agent. It was about the house, my grandfather's house, asking if I was still planning to list it. I hadn't even contacted a realtor yet. Confused, I called the agency. The woman on the phone was chipper, polite, but clearly a little puzzled. "Oh, I spoke to a Mr. Derek last week. He said he was representing you as family and wanted to get the ball rolling." I almost dropped the phone. I clarified that no, I had not authorized anyone to represent me or sell the house. She apologized profusely and said she'd make a note on the file, but the damage was done. He had tried to sell my house. My house. And not quietly, either. According to the agent, he'd already taken photos. Interior photos. That was the part that made my blood run cold. Because I hadn't given him a key. So how the hell did he get in? I drove out to the property the next day. It was a quiet Wednesday morning, and I made the hour-long trip with a pit in my stomach. The neighborhood was peaceful as ever, well-manicured lawns, retirees walking small dogs, mailboxes with flags politely raised. But when I pulled into the driveway, I immediately saw it. The lockbox. A chunky black realtor lockbox hanging from the doorknob. He'd changed the damn locks. I stood there for a full minute, just staring. My own house. My inheritance. The only thing that had ever been mine. And he had waltzed in and claimed it like it was nothing. Rage doesn't come in a flash, like movies show. Not always. Sometimes it comes in waves. Slow, creeping, unrelenting. I didn't scream. I didn't punch anything. I just pulled out my phone and took pictures. Of the lockbox. The exterior. The mailbox with my name on it. I walked the perimeter and filmed a slow video. Then I drove straight to the police station. It was the first time I said it out loud, to someone official. I think my brother broke into my house. The officer was surprisingly sympathetic. He took the report, asked if I had proof of ownership. I did, and told me to follow up with a locksmith and a lawyer. That evening, I had the locks changed again. This time, with a security system installed. Cameras. Motion alerts. A smart doorbell. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want them to know what I was planning. I just wanted to watch. Sure enough, 3 nights later, the motion sensor went off. I was at my apartment, but my phone lit up with the alert. Front door. Activity detected. I opened the app and there he was, Derek, standing on the porch in a hoodie, fumbling with the lockbox that was no longer there. He looked confused. Angry. He rattled the doorknob. And then he looked straight into the camera. He saw the light. Realized what it was. He didn't say anything, but I could see it in his face. He knew. I never called him. Never mentioned it. But the silence that followed was thick with something unspoken. A week later, I got a certified letter in the mail. My parents had hired a lawyer. The letter was a request, polite, legally worded, but clear. They wanted me to consider relinquishing partial rights to the estate in favor of Derek. It framed it as a gesture of goodwill. Said it was in the interest of family harmony. My father had signed it. Not my mother. Not Derek. My father. The same man who once told me, "You've got to earn your way in this world, Aaron." Now he wanted me to give away what I'd earned through grief. Through estrangement. Through silent, painful years of being the one no one fought for. I didn't respond. Instead, I went back to the house. Sat in my grandfather's old recliner. The one they hadn't gotten around to selling or donating yet. I sat there and just existed. Looked around at the dusty shelves, the old lamp with the crooked shade, the faint smell of leather and time. That's when I saw the photo. Tucked behind a stack of old Reader's Digests, on the bottom shelf of the bookshelf near the fireplace. A framed picture of me and Grandpa. I didn't remember it being taken. I must have been 19 or 20. We were sitting outside somewhere, maybe his porch, and I had this awkward grin. He looked proud. Tired, but proud. That photo broke me more than any betrayal. Because it made it real. He'd seen me, when no one else did. I left the picture there. Like a totem. The next day, I got another text from Derek. "You're being ridiculous. You know this isn't over, right?" I didn't answer. 2 days after that, my aunt called. The one who never calls. She sounded out of breath, like she was pacing. "I'm staying out of it," she started. "But you should know. Your parents are planning to go public about this." I blinked. Go public? What does that even mean? They're telling everyone. The cousins. The neighbors. Church. That you're withholding money from Derek. That Grandpa's will was manipulated. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It wasn't funny, but it was absurd. Manipulated? I hadn't even spoken to the man in 5 years. If anything, I'd assumed Derek would get everything. But that was the play. That was always the play. If they couldn't shame me privately, they'd shame me publicly. Sure enough, the next Sunday, the Facebook posts started again. "Mom, some people forget that family is a responsibility, not a competition. Dad, sad to see what greed does to a man. Derek's wife, Megan, my babies don't deserve this. They just want their uncle back." And then, because nothing in this family happens in isolation, I got an email from my job's HR department. A concerned community member had sent in an anonymous email claiming I was engaging in a legal dispute over contested assets and that it might affect my reliability. It was subtle, vague enough to be dismissed. But still, someone had tried to jeopardize my career. That's when I knew. This wasn't about the inheritance. It wasn't even about the house. It was about power and punishment. They couldn't believe I'd stood up for myself, that I had something they couldn't touch. So now they were going to burn the earth around me until I crawled back. But I wasn't crawling back. I was done crawling. I didn't react the way they expected. That's the part that probably confused them the most. No angry replies. No long-winded explanations. No family group chat meltdown. I didn't show up at their door to defend myself. I didn't beg to be understood. I didn't even post my side of the story on Facebook, which, in this family, is practically considered silence under oath. Instead, I got quiet. And when I say quiet, I mean I stepped all the way back. From everyone. My phone went on silent permanently. I stopped checking notifications. I deleted Facebook entirely. I even changed my number, not out of spite, but out of necessity. Because every time I saw my dad's name pop up or Derek's text light up my screen, my chest tightened like I'd swallowed a fist. And I couldn't keep living like that. But let me be clear, I didn't do it because I was strong. I did it because I was tired. There's this moment when you hit a kind of emotional rock bottom. Not the loud kind, not the crying on the floor kind, but the still kind. Like sitting at the bottom of a drained swimming pool, looking up at the world above you and realizing no one's coming down to get you. That was me, alone in a house full of someone else's furniture, eating microwave noodles at a plastic fold-out table because I hadn't had the time or energy to move real furniture in yet. That house, my inheritance, felt less like a gift and more like a battlefield. Every corner held some reminder of the war I didn't ask for. The guest bedroom Derek tried to list in the online home photos. The empty living room where they once hosted holidays without inviting me. Even the front porch, which I'd started calling the scene of the lockbox in my head. So yeah, I stopped talking to them. But that didn't mean the noise stopped. Word traveled fast. My cousin Brian texted me one night. Yo man, are you really suing your parents? I wasn't. Not yet. But the rumor mill had upgraded me from selfish to legally hostile, and the backlash followed me like a bad smell. Suddenly, I was the reason the family group vacation didn't happen. I was the one who split the family apart. I was making things weird for Derek's kids at school. One of my old high school friends even messaged me saying my dad had approached his mom at church to pray for Aaron's heart. I was being painted as the villain in a story they wrote without me. And for a while, I let it get to me. There was a stretch of weeks where I barely got out of bed. I stopped replying to work emails. My boss, a good guy, to his credit, called me and asked if I was okay. I lied and said I had the flu. He gave me the rest of the week off. I spent it watching documentaries and staring at the ceiling fan spin above my head. One night, I broke. It wasn't dramatic. I was brushing my teeth and caught my reflection in the mirror. Hair a mess, hoodie stained with ramen broth, eyes sunken and tired. And out loud, like an idiot, I whispered, what if they're right? What if I was selfish? What if I should just give it to Derek? What if I was making too big a deal out of it? Wouldn't it be easier to just let go, hand it over, go back to being the quiet one who never made waves? That thought sat with me all night. But something funny happened the next morning. I woke up. That's it. Just woke up. Got out of bed. Took a long shower. Cleaned the kitchen. Ordered a real table off Wayfair. Not because I had some motivational epiphany or watched a TikTok about healing. Just because I realized the world wasn't going to stop spinning for me. No one was coming to save me. And if I didn't want to drown in their version of my life, I had to start building my own. So I did. Slowly. The first thing I did was renovate the house. I didn't even plan to live in it long term. But I wanted to make it mine. To take back the narrative. I started with the kitchen, ripped out the cabinets myself, watched YouTube videos about tile work, painted until my hands cramped. It was messy and slow and completely out of my comfort zone, but it gave me something I hadn't had in months, a sense of control. Neighbors started noticing. One of them, Linda, late 60s, dog owner, excellent baker, brought me lemon bars and introduced herself. She'd known my grandfather. Said he used to wave from the porch every morning. We talked for 20 minutes. Nothing deep, just normal. The kind of conversation I hadn't had in too long. I didn't realize how much I missed being seen until I wasn't constantly ducking behind guilt. The house started to change. And so did I. At work, I found my footing again. Got involved in a new client project. Led a few calls. My boss noticed. Gave me a raise. Said I seemed different lately, in a good way. I smiled and thanked him. Didn't tell him it was because I'd finally stopped carrying a family on my back that never really carried me. And the inheritance? I didn't blow it. I didn't buy a sports car or fly to Bora Bora. I met with a financial advisor. Smart guy. Explained things in a way that didn't make me feel like a child. He helped me split the account into 3 parts. One for savings, one for investment, and one for something he called joy spending. I like that. I used the joy fund to do one thing. I booked a solo trip to Kyoto. Just me, a backpack, and no schedule. When I told Linda, she lit up. Said my grandfather always wanted to go to Japan. Never did. He'd be proud, she said, of the man you're becoming. I don't know why that hit me so hard. Maybe because no one else had said it. Not once. Not even close. But I was becoming someone. Not despite what happened, but because of it. The silence from my family didn't last forever, of course. After a few months of quiet, the messages started again. But this time different. Derek messaged me on WhatsApp, of all things. A simple, "Can we talk?" I didn't reply. Then an email from my mom. "We miss you. Derek's kids ask about you." Still no mention of the house, or the will, or the threats. Just this vague, guilt-drenched attempt to reel me back in. I sat with it for a while. Wondered if I should respond. But instead, I pulled out the old photo of me and Grandpa, the one from the bookshelf, and set it on my new desk next to my laptop. The house smelled different now. Fresh paint, clean wood, a hint of lemon from the candles I'd started lighting when I worked from home. It was mine. I was mine. That realization was everything. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to them. Not my worth. Not my success. Not my right to exist. I didn't reply to the message. But I didn't hate them, either. I just didn't belong to them anymore. And that, more than anything, was the beginning of the rise. It's strange how quiet clarity can be. Not the kind you get in a movie. No orchestral swell, no slow-motion walk into the sunset. Just small, deliberate steps that start adding up to something louder than words. You stop asking permission. You stop hoping they'll change. You stop explaining your side to people who've already chosen not to hear it. You start thinking like someone who finally knows what they're worth. And that's exactly where I was. A year had passed since the will was read. In that time, I'd transformed the house from a battlefield into a home, my home. The kitchen sparkled with subway tile I laid myself. The study smelled like books and coffee instead of dust and bitterness. The guest room had become a sanctuary of plants and sunlight. I even named it Room B, after my grandfather, Benjamin. I didn't tell anyone that. It was my quiet tribute. Financially, I was stable. Better than stable, actually. My job had promoted me. Twice. My savings were healthy. My investments were growing. My mental space? Clearer than it had ever been. And yet, I couldn't let it go. Not the house. Not the money. The betrayal. I could forgive people who made mistakes. But what they did wasn't a mistake. They calculated it. They tried to take something that wasn't theirs, not because they needed it, but because they believed it should be theirs. Because Derek had kids. Because I was just Aaron. Because, in their eyes, I didn't count unless I was giving something up. And the worst part? They still thought they got away with it. Just because I'd gone quiet. They didn't know silence wasn't surrender. Silence was strategy. It started when I found the group photo. It was an old picture from 2 years before Grandpa passed. Thanksgiving. Everyone crammed into the backyard, pretending they weren't secretly irritated at each other. My parents in the center. Derek, arms around his wife and kids. My aunt and uncle on the left. And there I was, all the way on the far edge, barely visible behind a tree branch. I hadn't seen it in years. But something about it clicked now. Because I remembered taking that photo. Literally. I'd used the timer, set up the tripod, and told everyone where to stand. Then I sprinted across the yard to get into the frame, and got shoved to the edge so Derek could be in the middle. Typical. I stared at that picture for a long time. And I remembered something else. Derek had made a toast that day. Something smarmy about legacy and family sticking together. Everyone clapped like he was JFK reincarnated. I remembered the way he looked at me from across the table, already dismissing me, already planning to inherit the world by default. And it hit me. They believed legacy belonged to him. But I owned it now, and I knew just how to remind them. Step one was the house. I didn't want to just live in it. I wanted to turn it into something visible, something that shouted from the rooftop, "This was never yours." So I hired an architect. Not just any architect, a former classmate of mine named Theo who'd started a design firm in the city. We weren't close in college, but we bumped into each other at a seminar last spring and exchanged info. I told him I wanted to restore the house, but keep the bones, modernize the interior, but preserve the soul. He was into it immediately. "I love this style," he said, walking through the halls with a sketchpad. "1950s Americana, but it's got these subtle craftsman touches. We can really bring that forward." I nodded, watching him run his hand along the windowsills. I wanted to feel like a place someone earned, not inherited. Earned. He didn't ask questions, just got to work. And I paid him, up front. Nothing says freedom like writing a check without flinching. Step 2 was the paper trail. I started gathering every document I could get my hands on. The will, the property deed, the emails from Thomas Gerber, the police report from when Derek tried to break in, the screenshots of my family's social media posts, the messages from Derek, my parents, my aunt. I organized them into a digital folder with tabs labeled legal, emotional abuse, property dispute, public slander, online harassment. Not because I planned to sue, but because I wanted the option. Because power isn't just about money or revenge. It's about leverage. And when you've spent your whole life being the one they thought would never fight back, nothing terrifies them more than realizing you've been documenting everything. Step 3, I started asking questions. Not to my family, to their circle. It began with Linda, my neighbor. She and my grandfather used to talk on the porch a lot. She remembered things. "Did you know Derek tried to sell this house?" I asked her casually one afternoon as we drank iced tea in her backyard. Her eyes went wide. "He what?" "Yeah," I said. "Had a realtor here and everything. Before the will was even fully executed." She blinked. "Your grandfather would have, well, he'd be livid." "He kind of was," I said, smiling faintly. Posthumously. We laughed, but the gears in my head were turning. I started reaching out to people who'd known my grandfather. His church friends. His old fishing buddy. The guy at the hardware store who sold him birdseed every spring. They all remembered me. Some vaguely. Some more fondly than I expected. One woman, Mrs. Palmer, an old friend of his from Sunday choir, told me something that chilled me. "He once told me," she said over the phone, "that he was worried your family would eat you alive if he didn't intervene." I swallowed hard. She continued. "He said, Aaron's good. Not loud, but good. And good men get steamrolled if no one steps in." That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just my fight. This was my responsibility. To honor what he tried to protect. So I started writing. It wasn't a revenge letter. It wasn't even for them. It was for me. I wrote down everything they'd ever said to make me feel smaller. Every time I was made to feel like a burden. Every gift Derek got that I didn't. Every chore I did while they watched TV. Every family gathering where I was the afterthought. Every moment I let them make me question if I was worth loving. And then I wrote down everything I'd done despite them. Got my degree. Held down 2 jobs at once. Paid off my debt. Bought my first car. Got promoted. Traveled alone. Rebuilt a house from the ground up. It was a long list. Longer than I expected. And at the bottom, I wrote, "I will no longer apologize for who I had to become to survive the people who refused to see me." I folded that list and tucked it into the drawer next to my bed. Not because I needed to look at it, but because one day they might. And when they did, I wanted them to know I remembered everything. The final step of the setup came almost by accident. Theo had finished the blueprints. The permits were filed. The renovations were underway. And as I was walking through the house with him, admiring the early changes, he said something that stuck. "You know," he said, running his hand along the new stair banister, "this place has history. If it were mine, I'd name it." I raised an eyebrow. "Name it?" "Sure," he shrugged. "People name properties all the time, especially homes with legacy. You've got something special here." That night, I sat in the living room, my living room, staring at the fireplace. And then it came to me. The Benjamin house. Not flashy, not dramatic, just his name. But it felt right, like an echo of everything he gave me. Not just the inheritance, but the belief that I was worth fighting for. I filed the paperwork the next day, created a website, registered the property as a small retreat space for writers and artists, booked the first guest for the summer, an author friend of mine who needed a quiet place to finish her novel. And just like that, the house stopped being a symbol of pain. It became a mission, a way to rewrite the legacy. My legacy. And as for my family, they still hadn't seen what was coming. But they would, because I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The housewarming invite was never meant for them. But I sent it anyway. A cream-colored card, simple embossed lettering. You are cordially invited to the reopening of the Benjamin House, a creative retreat and legacy home. Date, time, website link, RSVP optional. No signature, no explanation. I sent it to my parents' address, to Derek's, even to my aunt who once told me, family sticks together, but not everyone is glue. I knew they'd get it. I knew it would burn. And honestly, that was the point. The official reopening was nothing extravagant, just 30 or so people, mostly creatives, neighbors, and a few friends from work. The house had been transformed. Open concept living space, clean Scandinavian lines mixed with warm heritage elements. The dining room still had Grandpa's original table, but now it sat beneath a chandelier I found at a vintage shop. The back porch was rebuilt entirely, facing the woods with a wraparound railing and hanging string lights. It wasn't a palace. It was dignity. The new sign above the door read, "The Benjamin House, established 1957/reclaimed 2025. It was subtle, but I knew it would strike exactly where I needed it to. Derek saw the website first. I know this because he messaged me the night before the opening. What the hell is this? You turned Grandpa's house into a business. I stared at his message, sipping a cup of tea, and finally wrote back. I turned it into something that gives back. You tried to sell it. He left it on read. Good, because the revenge was never going to be explosive. No lawsuits. No screaming matches. I had something better. Visibility. Every person they knew would see the announcement. The church friends. The neighbors. The old family friends who had grown quiet over the years, but still watched Facebook like it was the evening news. I'd uploaded the full renovation process as a blog on the website. Pictures, updates, even a short video walkthrough narrated by Theo. In the opening credits, I had included a dedication. For Benjamin Moore, who saw value where others only saw silence. It wasn't petty. It wasn't even aimed at them. But they took it that way. A few days after the launch, Mom finally called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice was tight, controlled, like she was trying not to let anything spill over. Your father and I feel very disappointed by how you've handled this. There were ways to include the family, but you've made this whole thing about yourself. It's sad, Aaron. Really sad. I saved the voicemail. Listened to it once. Then never again. Because I already knew how they operated. Any power I claimed was selfish. Any boundary I set was betrayal. Any success I built outside their system was a threat. But this time, they had no control. And that, more than anything, was the revenge. Not the money. Not the property. Not even the website or the retreat guests or the full booking calendar. The real revenge was this. They didn't matter anymore. And when people no longer have the power to hurt you, but know that they once did, that's the kind of silence that drives them mad. But I wasn't done. There was one more thing. I hired a videographer, a local filmmaker I met at a community arts event. I told her I wanted to create a short documentary, nothing huge, just a 10-minute piece for the website and YouTube channel. She asked what it was about. I told her the truth. It's about legacy, about reclaiming it, about what happens when someone quietly invests in the black sheep of the family, and how that changes everything. She loved it. We filmed over the course of a week. She captured the renovations, the letters my grandfather wrote, the old family photos I found in storage, the stories from Linda and Mrs. Palmer. I narrated most of it. My voice shook during some parts, but I didn't edit those out. The final video was titled, "The House He Gave Me, A Quiet Inheritance." I uploaded it. Within 2 weeks, it hit 20,000 views. I didn't expect that. People started reaching out. Strangers, saying how much it resonated, how they had similar families, how they were the invisible ones too. One guy said he cried watching it. A woman emailed me saying it inspired her to go back to school at 42. Another wanted to visit the house, said she hadn't written poetry in a decade, but watching that video made her pick up a pen again. I kept every message, not because I needed validation, but because they were proof that I wasn't alone. Then came the fallout. It started when my dad's coworker apparently saw the video. I found out through my cousin, who texted, "Uncle Frank is losing it. Says someone at his office shared your video during lunch. He's mad you're airing private family history online." That made me smile, because that was the fear, wasn't it? Not that I was lying, but that I was telling the truth, and that people believed me. My aunt unfriended me on every platform. My mother posted a long-winded status about narcissists who rewrite history. My brother? Radio silence. Until one night, I got a letter. A real letter. Handwritten. From Derek. It was 2 pages long. The first half was anger disguised as diplomacy. He said I misrepresented him. That he never meant to take anything from me. That he was just trying to protect the family legacy. And then, near the end, the tone changed. It got quiet. He wrote, "I don't know why Grandpa chose you. I don't think I'll ever understand it. But it's clear now that he saw something in you the rest of us didn't. Maybe we were too busy looking in mirrors." That line stuck with me. It was the closest thing to an apology I would ever get. But I didn't write back. I didn't need to. Because forgiveness is not the same as access. They could heal on their own time. But they wouldn't do it in my house. The Benjamin House opened officially for its first full retreat in May. For writers, 2 painters, and 1 digital artist stayed for 10 days. I cooked for them on weekends. We had porch talks, lit bonfires, shared stories about healing, creation, and what it means to start over. One night, a writer from Vermont told me, "This place feels like it was built by someone who knows what it's like to not be heard." I smiled. "I do." She nodded. "Well, you're heard now." And I was. By people who mattered. By people who saw me, not as a wallet, not as a scapegoat, not as a failure, but as someone who rebuilt a broken legacy into something worth passing on. That fall, I planted a tree in the backyard. A sugar maple. Grandpa loved those. I stood there after the digging was done, hands muddy, sun setting. And I said, out loud, for the first time, "Thank you for choosing me." The wind rustled the branches. And I swear, for a second, it felt like an answer. Because in the end, this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoration. About becoming the man they tried to erase, and doing it without asking for permission. I never told my family the full truth about what I was building. But I think they figured it out eventually. Because legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you do with it. And I had finally done something that no one in my family had the courage to do. I chose to begin again. Quietly. Steadily. Permanently. And I never looked back.